Welcome to the Angus Report. I'm Clint Mefford, and we're bringing you the latest cattle news and education. This week, we're discussing fencing options. We talk about recent trends in USDA quality grades. The new Angus Blackbook app is live and ready for producers to download, and we visit with John Pfeffier, American Angus Association president at his ranch in Mulhall, Oklahoma. This is the Angus Report. Whether it's water tanks or fencing around pastures, a solid infrastructure is the foundation of any successful operation. We caught up with Jason Jones, Eastern Region Manager at Datamars, to discuss what fencing options are best suited for different production systems.
So the different types of fencing that are available out there for ranchers to use, of course we got traditional methods such as barbed wire, woven wire, field fence types of techniques that are used. And then we also have smooth wire, which will be used to construct high tensile power fencing, electric fencing. So that's kind of the three main methods that you would see used on most cattle ranches. So the advantages to each of those, such as a barbed wire fence, would be you've got more of a physical barrier with a barbed wire fence. Same way with the woven wire or the field fencing, it serves as a physical barrier. With high tensile electric fencing, we're using it more as a psychological barrier. The animal does not want to push on that fence, does not want to contact that fence because of the perceived shock that may occur when the animal contacts the fence. I would say that when we're looking at electric fencing, it's typically going to be used more in a rotational grazing type situation because we can make that fencing portable to suit the size of paddock that's suitable for the amount of animals that will be grazing. It would be best to use traditional fencing methods such as barbed wire or woven wire, where you're maybe not going to maintain that fence frequently or do as good a job of keeping undergrowth and things like that off of the fence. But if someone's going to maintain the fence, electric fencing will be more cost effective than traditional fencing will.
Choosing the right fence for your particular operation is key, but fence maintenance should also be a high priority.
When we speak of maintaining electric fencing, we would recommend that you would want to spray some type of herbicide on those fence rows probably at least once a year, just to keep the vegetative growth down. And if you do those types of things, you shouldn't have any problems with electric fencing. If you're going to build a fence and not maintain it for 30 years and then plan on coming in and bulldozing it out and rebuilding 30 years from now, that's when traditional fencing is probably more suitable.
Datamars recently released a new energy-free water tank line to assist producers in incorporating water management into grazing practices, no matter their region.
The quality of water the livestock can access in these types of tanks is just a higher quality of water. They're not drinking out of a pond, drinking muddy water that may have contaminants in it, may spread disease that way. We're getting these animals fresh, clean water at all times throughout the year. So in the winter, we're not concerned with the water freezing, but also in the summer, they're getting cool, fresh water as opposed to stagnant 90 to 100 degree temperature water. With these types of watering systems, it's certainly an investment on the rancher's part, but we stress to keep in mind that this is a 10 to 15 year type investment on these water tanks. This is not something that's usable for a year or two and then you have to replace it. These come with an 8-year warranty against UV breakdown, so they're built to be out there in the elements, in the sun, and they won't break down. So it is a long-term infrastructure type investment on the ranch.
Stay tuned. We'll be back with more Angus Report after a break.
Welcome back to the Angus Report. The certified Angus beef brand continues to provide value for producers across the beef supply chain. We hear about the driving factors behind recent grading trends and carcass quality in the latest CAB market update.
Today I have with me Paul Dykstra, our beef cattle specialist for the brand. So Paul, today we're sitting on the biggest supply of premium quality beef we've ever had in the history of our industry. Talk to me about what we're seeing with some of the grading trends.
In the last 10 or 12 years, we've had an unprecedented increase in the quality of America's beef cattle, period. And when I say quality, I'm talking about the quality grade and marbling in those carcasses. We just have seen the national average steer and heifer harvest go from about 55% choice and better to now where we have 80% choice in prime carcasses and record percentage of cattle that are being accepted into the certified Angus beef brand.
Talk to me about why we're seeing some of this change happen.
Well, we have better management now. So in the feedlot specifically, I think we're best tuned today to manage growth from the standpoint of technologies, and as well as the rations that we're utilizing today with the inclusion of distillers grains. And possibly more importantly is the genetic aspect, where the seed stock industry, specifically Angus breeders, are creating a higher quality, higher marbling set of cattle to sell to their customers, and consequently those commercial cattlemen are increasing and improving their cattle from a carcass perspective as well across the country.
So as we're seeing these trends move upward, talk to me about how prime has changed.
Prime used to be a product that we were pretty familiar with at a 2 to 3% level of all of our fed cattle product years ago, and we've been steadily increasing that as well. So today we're looking at more like 7 and 8% prime of all of our fed steers and heifers on an annual basis, with spikes up to even 12% prime in certain packing plants in certain regions of the country on a seasonal basis. So we have a lot more of that very highly marbled product available to the industry today.
Tell me about what this means for the certified Angus beef brand with this greater supply of prime now available.
The certified Angus beef brand also has a prime branded extension, and we have had for many years. But this gives us the opportunity then to go out and merchandise that prime brand extension more aggressively and making it accessible to more licensees that previously more than likely could not either access supply of the product or afford the price point, which is also much lower today based on that higher availability.
Is this a good thing or a bad thing for the cattlemen?
It's a pretty good thing. We are seeing the box beef cutout for prime go down some. So from a cattleman's perspective, that raises question marks. However, we're building in a customer base for those highly marbled carcasses that I believe will help very much in the long term from a demand aspect, and we certainly need that as we look down the road and have higher quality cattle available.
So prime is definitely possible today, and we're growing consumers' taste for it.
Absolutely. The customer is getting very used to that higher eating experience, and we've got the cattle to fulfill that supply.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. For more information like this, please visit cabcattle.com. There you can find information on our CAB Insider, a biweekly column written by Paul.
We check in now on the latest cattle market news with the Cattle Facts Update.
Hello and welcome to the Cattle Facts Update. I'm Patrick Linnell. For the first time in this expansion cycle, beef production was down in the first quarter of 2019. And with a favorable trade balance expected to start the year, per capita beef supplies were also expected to see their first decline since 2014. Total cattle slaughter numbers were up about 50,000 head in the first quarter, less than 1% growth compared to last year. Over half of that increase was in dairy cow slaughter, as that industry continues to be challenged by low milk prices and tight margins. Beef cow slaughter was the next biggest contributor, an expected increase considering the growth in the beef cow herd and the tapering off of the expansion cycle. Meanwhile, total fed cattle slaughter was up just 10,000 head across the quarter. While total cattle slaughter numbers were slightly larger, declines in carcass weights were more than offsetting from a tonnage perspective. Fed cattle carcass weights were down over 10 pounds from last year due to the performance impact from tough winter weather, as well as a higher percentage of heifers in the slaughter mix. In terms of beef production, every 1% change in weights is roughly equal to 5,000 head per week in slaughter. By this measure, the decline in weights took the equivalent of 140,000 head worth of beef off the market from January to March. Putting together slightly larger slaughter with lighter weights, First quarter beef production was off just shy of 1% from last year. Beef production will be slightly larger to near even with last year in the second quarter as the difference in weights narrows in the coming months. Larger placements through the spring and a larger cattle on feed inventory means that we will likely still see year-over-year increases in beef production into the second half of the year. For the Angus Report and Cattle Facts, I'm Patrick Linnell.
To learn more about Cattle Facts, your leading source for beef industry market information, visit cattlefacts.com.
Next on the Angus Report, we hear about the newly released Angus Blackbook app. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Commercial producers have leveraged the Angus Blackbook as a handy record-keeping tool for many calving seasons. The American Angus Association recently launched a mobile version of the Angus Blackbook with the modern commercial cattleman in mind. We sat down with John Gottsweiler, Director of Commercial Programs at the American Angus Association, to learn all about the new app.
You know, for years, producers have utilized the Angus Blackbook. You know what? It has been over a few miles, and we have had more than one producer call in and say, I washed my black book. And you know what? I've had a few guys almost crying. So to kind of counteract that, we now have Angus Blackbook Mobile. Angus Blackbook Mobile was invented with the new cow guy in mind almost, so that you guys can just keep rolling all day long out on the ranch. You know, you don't need network to upload and to keep your records on the Angus Blackbook app because it is a cloud-based system. Whether you have internet connectivity or not isn't a problem. We also have a web portal so that you can go on and upload those calves via a spreadsheet rather than sitting there and entering them one at a time yourself. We really have this designed to benefit a large ranch clear down to a small. So if you want to add all of your pastures, you can move groups of cattle by pasture. If you want to add a health protocol, you can do it to the group or individual. You can make a call list. If you want to keep track of the sire and the dam of every calf, you can do that as well. If you want to include a DNA sample and just keep that card, you can log that. Keep weights if you want to make groups so that you've got a set of calves that you're going to be selling at the sale barn and put those weights together and maybe you're going to load those out. You can do that. So one of the things that we have added to Angus Blackbook is user roles. So there would be an administrator overall, and then you can literally add workers if you want, or you can give them full rights. So let's just say, for instance, you know, you're on a really large ranch and you contract out and have someone help you process some calves. So you would be able to add them as a worker, and that way they wouldn't be able to see your whole entire operation, but you would give them permissions to add health and weights to those calves while they're processing. The other thing that is really a great feature is pastures. So you can add those pastures in, pasture movement. In addition, you can record like how much hay you may take off of each of those pastures. If you choose to fertilize each pasture, keep track of those dates and the amount of let's just say the P&K that you're putting on those pastures yearly. For those producers who utilize artificial insemination, this app is really a useful tool because, you know, you can literally go in and pick your protocol, your products. It will set reminders for you when you need to give like your GnRH, pull your CEDARs, and it will go on and calculate that calving date. You can add what day you're going to be putting that bull in, whether it be 14, 21 days later. It will remind you when might be a great day to preg check those as well. The Angus Blackbook app is really geared for our commercial producers. So any commercial producer can utilize this app. It is free to download. It does not link to your AAA login account. So those registered breeders, you're more than welcome to keep information on here, but please know that you're not going to be able to transfer that data to AAA login. I know you're dying to know how to get this Angus Blackbook on your phone, so it is on Google through the App Store. You can also check out angusblackbook.com to learn more about the app, and that would be a way to get to that web portal as well. Again, this is a free service to commercial cattle producers who want to do a better job or even maybe want to start doing a little bit more record keeping.
Up next, we head to Mulhall, Oklahoma to visit Pfeffier Angus Farms. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Angus Report. In 1907, John Pfeffier's great-grandfather purchased his first registered Angus bull, not knowing this was the beginning of a long legacy. Now the owner and operator of Pfeffier Angus Farms, John has been instrumental in making the operation the successful business it is today. John has proven himself both servant and leader to the Angus breed and currently serves as the president of the American Angus Association.
I was called and recruited to run for the American Angus Association board. Received a call from another member here in Oklahoma. Actually, he was an old judging team friend. And he said, we want you to run for the American Angus Association board. And I said, I said one thing, I said, you know, I don't have that many cows. I said, there's not that many people know me in the Angus breed. I mean, we've had Angus cows a long time, but I said on a national level, we're not that big. I said, look, I've worked real hard. I said, I'm getting ready to move up in Farm Bureau here in the state. I'm getting ready to move in the others. He said, well, think about it and get back to me. So my wife and I sat down and we talked about it. And we said, yeah, well, you know, we can go ahead and run. So finally I called him back and told him I would run. And so we ran on that first one. And on the first time I ran to get elected on the first ballot, when there was 10 of us running that year, I was thoroughly aghast. I mean, I did not expect that. I've been very honored. I was able to get reelected and really thought at the end of 6 years that would probably be the end of it. And decided I would run for treasurer, and the board members selected me as treasurer and then as vice president and up as president. To be elected president this last year was truly an honor. I have learned a lot serving on the Angus board. So it's been like a post-PhD almost of all the information and stuff that we have to keep up with to make decisions and know what's going on in the industry. I was born on a small farm in Oklahoma. It was a family farm of my dad and granddad. My great-granddad would have purchased his first registered Angus bull in 1907, and we have been in continuous Angus operations since that time. My dad was one of 4 children, and then I am one of 6, the oldest of 6. So all my brothers and sisters live within an hour of here, and most of us all live right here in this same community, so we don't move very far away. Most of the Pfeiffers in this area seem to all be named John. My granddad's name was John, my dad's name was John, I'm John, and then our son that's a state representative is also John. And then I also have a cousin in this same town of like 300 that's named John. My wife says that we're just not very creative and we didn't know any other names, so she can't understand why we just keep naming everybody John. One of the things that my granddad did was whenever a grandkid was born, he immediately signed them up in the American Angus Association as soon as we were born. He also provided me with my first Angus heifers that we began to show. And so I showed those 2 heifers, and when I got done, then he took them back and put them in his herd. And my granddad had production sales each and every year. And so when my first heifer calved, he put the bull in, and like I got a check from him for $500, and he didn't take any feed or anything out. So I thought the cattle business was really good. You know, you just pick up a check, and it was really good. I went to a small high school, graduated, attended Oklahoma State University with a degree in animal science. When I started OSU, I actually started out to be a dentist because I knew that if I could ever be a dentist, then I'd have lots of money to raise cows. I forgot that to be a dentist, you have to also like to study, and probably wasn't as good a student as I could have been. So after a few years there, I switched back to animal science. That's where my love was, and came back at that time to the family farm. And this would have been in the late 70s, early 80s and realized at that time, in the late 70s, it was not the best of times in agriculture here in Oklahoma, and that I needed to do some other things. And so I went back and got a teaching certificate. I actually taught science classes, and I would have taught for 30 years. My favorite thing was to see when the kids really made achievements and really went forward. One day in my chemistry class, we were looking at gases that were less dense than air. And one of the neat things that you can do is you can take and make you a soapy solution, and then you can bubble methane gas through it. And as you bubble methane gas through it, then the bubbles begin to rise and float up to the ceiling. Well, then you can take and ignite those with a candle, and it makes this glorious flame as it just goes up over the top of the ceiling. And we were doing that one day, and we just kept seeing if we could make the bubbles bigger and bigger and bigger. And right as we lit one of them, the principal stuck his head in the door, and the whole ceiling just kind of lights up with fire, and he didn't ever come back and bother us during lab again after that. I would have bought this farm in 1975 while I was still in college with a single bid, and this would be the humble beginnings that we've worked from at that time. We farm about 3,000 acres here right now, and we'll run about 300 mother cows, of which 200 of those are registered at this time. There have been lots of challenges as we went through. There have been, I always tell everybody is, if you want to know what not to do, then just watch what I'm doing. Because it seems like that if there's a mistake that can be made, we seem to be able to make it at various times as we go through here. We've had, in the last 12 years, we've had a very rapid growth. I mean, if you would have looked at us 12 years ago, we'd have been about 70 cows. And so we have more than tripled and doubled that in size and such the whole time I've been on the Angus board. And as you add that, then you add more problems, and I think the problems quadruple themselves as you go through. But the rewards also get better too, because it allows you to go through some of those mistakes. Probably one of the biggest things is when I got married and my wife came back here to help me, because if you both have the same dream and you want to work towards that dream, then it makes it a lot more achievable as we go through it. We would have actually met at Oklahoma Youth Expo, which is, at that time, it was the Oklahoma City Stock Show. I was actually chaperoning a dance, and she would have came to the dance that night, and we met at that time, and then after she got back to OSU to school, we had a couple dates, and within about 60 days of meeting, we were engaged. We didn't get married for another year, so it was almost kind of like love at first sight. Even though we were engaged quickly after that, we didn't get married for a while because her mother wanted her to get another year of school in before we got married. So we used to always try to take off a weekend on our anniversary and go. But 2 years ago, things were really busy. We were breeding cows and working. And so the anniversary dinner out was a trip to Sonic where we grabbed hot dogs and stuff. So we said, this is where we've gotten after 35 years, is we're now at Sonic with hot dogs instead of going out somewhere nice to eat. We've been very fortunate, we've been very blessed. I mean, where else can you get up in the morning and you can look out the window while you're here at breakfast and watch your calves playing and not have to do the same thing each and every day? Today I can be breeding cows, tomorrow I can be working ground. And the fact that we get a chance to do that, it just sets us apart, and I think it's just a wonderful life. When I was in high school, I had a really good science teacher, and he'd always look at me and he said, yes, he said, in old age, you're gonna be running black cows on green grass and just sitting there looking at them. And he probably knew more about where I was at that time than I did. There are times I have looked back and said, you know, I probably should have studied a little harder when I was in college, but haven't ever missed not being a dentist.
Well, it was really great to travel down to Mulhall, Orlando and spend time with our president. And that's a wrap for this week's Angus Report. Tune in next week for industry-leading news and education, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Angus TV, for more highlights from the association. We'll see you next week.